Trust, for me, wasn't a switch I flipped on for just anyone. It was something earned, carefully layered like bricks in a wall over time. With Emily, I thought that wall was impenetrable. We'd been together for 6 years, 3 of those as husband and wife, and though life had its ordinary hiccups, I always believed we were solid. That night felt like any other social event we'd agreed to for the sake of appearances. Another dinner hosted by one of her work colleagues. Naomi was her name, someone I'd met once or twice. Emily had raved about her before. Funny, sharp, the kind of woman who could sell ketchup popsicles to a woman in white gloves, she used to say. So, there we were, me, Emily, and about a dozen of her coworkers and their spouses, crowded around a long dining table with mismatched chairs and string lights hanging above us. There was wine, too much of it. The kind of cozy chaos that makes everyone talk a little louder and laugh a little harder. I played the supportive husband role like I always did, asking polite questions, listening to office gossip I didn't really understand, laughing at stories I wasn't part of. Emily was glowing that night, or maybe that's just what I told myself. She had on a dark green dress I'd never seen before, and her hair curled slightly at the ends like she'd actually put effort into it. I remember thinking how proud I was to be by her side. I didn't notice right away that she was checking her phone more than usual, or that every time she did, her smile would flicker, almost imperceptibly. It was during dessert prep that the moment happened, the one I can't unsee. Emily had gone to help Naomi with slicing the cake in the kitchen. The guests had trickled into the living room, wine glasses in hand, continuing conversations about work trips, awkward team meetings, and vacation plans. I stayed behind to grab our phones, which we'd left on the counter with our coats. Hers buzzed right as I picked it up. At first, I thought it was just a calendar alert or a group message, but the name that flashed on the screen stopped me cold. Beth. I didn't recognize it. That wouldn't be odd on its own, but it was the message underneath that made my stomach twist. Last night was unforgettable. I can't stop thinking about you. When can we meet again? My first thought wasn't even anger, it was confusion. I read it again, as if my brain had misfired. My heart pounded in my chest like it was trying to escape. Who was Beth? And what exactly happened last night? Emily and I had both gone to bed around the same time, or so I thought. Then I remembered. She'd gotten home late. Really late. She said her team had a post-project dinner and drinks. Some last-minute gathering that went longer than expected. She mentioned karaoke, said they were blowing off steam. I didn't push. I trusted her. I shouldn't have. I heard her footsteps returning just as I was processing what I'd seen. I didn't have time to think. I turned to her, still holding her phone, trying to keep my face neutral. Thought I'd take a photo of the group, I said casually, as she glanced at her screen. Her eyes widened only for a split second, and then she laughed loud. Too loud. Oh my God, that's just Beth being ridiculous, she said, plucking the phone from my hand with a practiced ease. Inside joke from way back. She sends stuff like that all the time. Super sarcastic. She was smiling, but her voice was thin around the edges. There was a forced lightness in her tone that didn't match the pit forming in my gut. She tucked the phone away like it was a harmless toy, then looped her arm around mine. Come on, she said, nudging me toward the living room. Naomi wants to take a group picture. Just like that, the moment dissolved into the noise of the evening. The rest of the night passed in a blur. People laughed. Someone spilled wine. Naomi made everyone stand on the porch for a goofy photo. But for me, it was like trying to watch a movie underwater. Couldn't hear right. Everything felt a little out of sync. I kept replaying the message in my head. Last night was unforgettable. I couldn't remember the last time Emily had described anything we did together like that. And the way she deflected, too quick, too polished, it didn't feel like an inside joke. Felt like a cover. And then there was the timing. She'd come home around 1:30 a.m. that night. I'd been half asleep on the couch when she tiptoed in, cheeks flushed, makeup slightly smudged. She'd kissed me on the forehead and whispered, "Go back to sleep, babe." I didn't ask questions. I thought that made me trusting. In hindsight, it just made me naive. After the dinner, as we drove home in silence, I glanced at her several times. She stared out the passenger window, her arms crossed. Not in a cold way, but in a guarded one. I tried to convince myself that maybe I misread everything. Maybe it really was just an odd joke from a quirky friend I'd never met. But no matter how much I tried to shake it, the unease had rooted itself deep. When we got home, she went straight to the bathroom. I heard the click of the door locking. I sat in the darkened living room, staring at nothing, the soft tick of the wall clock suddenly sounding deafening. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother about catching a game next weekend, but I barely registered it. My focus was stuck on that message, those few damning words that hinted at a version of my wife I didn't know. When she finally came out, she smiled, asked if I wanted to watch a show. I said I was tired. She didn't protest. Lying in bed that night, her back turned to me, I stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open. That message, the look on her face, the weird silence in the car. It all coiled around me like vines, squeezing tighter. Something was wrong. I didn't want to believe it, but a voice in the back of my head kept whispering what I was too afraid to say out loud. Something had changed. You ever have that one moment where something just clicks? Like suddenly your brain opens a file it had kept locked away, and everything you didn't notice before comes rushing out all at once? That's what happened after that dinner party. That single message, from Beth, had cracked open something I hadn't realized was fragile. In the days that followed, I started seeing everything differently. Every routine, every offhand comment, every behavior that once seemed harmless now took on a different shade. The thing about suspicion is that it doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't slam you with answers. It feeds you fragments, little puzzle pieces that don't quite make sense until you're staring at the whole thing. The first piece? Her evenings. For the past couple of months, Emily had been staying out later than usual. First it was yoga, then it was book club, then team-building events, seminars, wine nights, quick drinks after work, or just a walk to clear my head. The list grew longer as her explanations grew shorter. She was always somewhere doing something, and I was always just the guy at home heating leftovers and watching reruns. And sure, I asked about it at first. I wanted to be supportive, not overbearing. How was yoga? What book are you reading this month? How's the new guy on your team? Her responses got vaguer over time. One-word answers. A shrug. A half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. And then there was the phone. She used to leave it face up on the coffee table, didn't care if it buzzed during dinner, didn't flinch when I walked into the room. But lately, it was always with her, always face down, and always locked. I noticed the password changed one day. I only realized because we used to share the same code. Something silly we came up with after a movie night. 0629, our anniversary. Now, when I tried to check the weather while she was in the shower, I got the buzz and read text. Try again. That change didn't sit right with me. Another thing? Her browser history. Clean. Spotless. Too clean. I'm not tech-savvy, but even I know people don't delete their entire history every day unless they've got something to hide. And it wasn't just her laptop. Her tablet? Same story. Nothing. Like her digital life had been bleached. And then there were her moods. She'd get jumpy when I asked even casual questions about her day. Not angry, just defensive. Once, when I asked how the team-building paint night went, she laughed too hard and said, "Oh, you wouldn't care, it was just dumb work stuff." And then she changed the subject. I used to chalk it up to stress. Her job was demanding. She had tight deadlines, a difficult boss. That's what I told myself. But when I looked closer, it wasn't stress. It was detachment. We used to talk all the time about everything. Dumb things like why they never make the right number of hot dogs and buns. Serious things like where we wanted to live 5 years from now. But recently, our conversations felt like small talk with a stranger at a bus stop. Surface level. Cold. Empty. She didn't ask about my day anymore. Didn't ask about work or the book I was reading or how my brother's surgery went. When I mentioned it, she blinked like it was the first time she'd heard it. I knew then. She hadn't been listening. The int asterisk Macy faded too. Not just physically, emotionally. When we lay in bed, I'd reach out and touch her arm. but she'd be halfway turned already. Phone in hand, screen illuminating her face like a shield. I'd ask if she was tired, and she'd just nod without looking up. There were nights I stayed awake just listening to her breathing, wondering if I even recognized the woman next to me anymore. And it wasn't just what she did, it was how she did it. That anxious little glance she'd throw when I picked up her phone to hand it to her. The way she'd brighten up when a text came in and then dim as soon as she realized I was watching. That automatic twitch of her fingers closing tabs or silencing calls. These weren't the moves of someone living with nothing to hide. These were the reflexes of someone guarding a secret. But the worst part, the part one hate admitting, is that she still smiled at me. Still kissed me goodbye in the morning. Still said love you as she grabbed her keys and disappeared out the door. And every time she said it, it felt like a dagger because it made me wonder, did she still mean it? Or had love you become her way of covering her tracks? I started paying closer attention. One night, she said she was meeting her old friend Zoe from college. I asked casually, "Oh, Zoe from Seattle?" Emily nodded without hesitation. But I remembered Zoe telling us on a Zoom call weeks ago that she had taken a teaching job in Japan and wouldn't be back until the spring. It wasn't a slip. It was a lie. And once you catch one, it's hard not to go looking for more. I started keeping a quiet log, times, locations, reasons. Not out of paranoia, but because I needed something real. My memory was no longer enough. If I confronted her, I didn't want to rely on gut feelings. I wanted facts. The next Tuesday, she claimed she was going to a team dinner in Midtown. But when I called the restaurant later, pretending to check if my wife left her scarf, the host said there was no reservation under her name or the company's. I tried again with the same result. I didn't say anything when she got home. She looked flushed, giddy even. She tossed her heels by the door and plopped down on the couch beside me, her perfume lingering like it had been freshly reapplied. When I asked if the dinner had gone well, she nodded, then added something vague about too many mojitos and Karen ordering a whole plate of oysters. There was no Karen on her team. And she hates oysters. I didn't sleep much that night. I couldn't. My mind kept pulling apart everything like threads on a sweater, memories, words, patterns. I thought about how distant she'd become, how every part of her life felt like it was moving away from me, just slowly enough that I'd mistake it for coincidence. But I wasn't imagining it. The signs were real. They were everywhere. I just hadn't wanted to see them. I remember standing in our hallway one evening, staring at the framed photo of us from our trip to Maine. She was holding a lobster roll, her nose wrinkled in mock disgust. I was laughing, arm wrapped around her shoulders. It was taken just 2 years ago, but it felt like a lifetime had passed since then. That woman, my Emily, wasn't here anymore. In her place was someone who vanished into text messages from Beth, locked screens, changed passwords, late-night drinks, and disappearing acts. I wasn't just losing her. I already had. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't going to end with just suspicion. Something was coming. I could feel it. There are moments you can never forget, things that stain your memory like spilled ink. For me, it was a Thursday morning, just past 9:15 a.m. when the illusion officially shattered. It started with a cancellation. I was supposed to meet a client for breakfast, a regular thing, something I looked forward to. But he called last minute with a family emergency, apologized profusely, and promised to reschedule. I should have been disappointed, but instead I felt something shift. A strange curiosity bubbled up. Emily had said she'd be working from home that day. She'd been vague about it, mumbled something about needing quiet to prep for a webinar. I hadn't asked questions. But as I sat in my car, sipping bad drive-through coffee, a thought crept in, go home. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to catch her being exactly what she claimed she was. Maybe I wanted proof that I was wrong, that my suspicions were just paranoia fed by too much silence and too many late nights. Either way, I turned the wheel and headed back. I parked a few houses down, K** led the engine, and sat there for a minute. The house looked the same, curtains drawn, porch empty, our little mailbox leaning slightly from that one time the wind knocked it off kilter. I walked up quietly, careful not to let the gate creak. My key turned in the lock like normal, and I stepped inside. Silence. No typing, no Zoom voice, no clatter of coffee mugs. Just stillness. I paused in the hallway listening. And then I heard it, a laugh. Soft, muffled, followed by another voice. A man's voice. I froze. My stomach turned to concrete. The voices were coming from the bathroom. The door was mostly shut, but not all the way. The sound of water running, a giggle, low murmurs. I did something I'm not proud of. I took out my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I hit record, held it up toward the crack in the door, and just stood there, absorbing the worst confirmation I could have imagined. "Can't wait for the weekend," he was saying. "That cabin you found looks perfect." "You're going to love it," Emily replied, her voice hushed but warm in a way I hadn't heard in months. More murmurs. Another laugh. Then silence followed by the faintest sound of a kiss. I backed away. My heart thudded so hard it echoed in my ears. I didn't confront them. I didn't kick the door in. I didn't even make a sound. Instead, I turned around, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. I didn't drive home. I didn't even drive to my brother's right away. I found myself sitting in a parking lot, staring out at an empty baseball field, the audio still playing over and over on my phone like some kind of sick lullaby. I listened until I couldn't anymore, then just sat in silence. There it was. Undeniable proof. The thing I had dreaded and doubted and suspected. I had it all: voices, words, tone, timing. It wasn't some flotation. It wasn't a misunderstanding. They were planning weekends together. They were an asterisk mate. They were real. I'd always imagined cheating as a sharp, instant betrayal, like catching someone mid-act or finding lipstick on a shirt collar. But the real damage wasn't in the drama. It was in the quiet. The softness of the voices. The tenderness. It hurt more than screaming ever could. By noon, I was at my brother's apartment on the other side of the city. I didn't call ahead. He opened the door, took one look at me, and just said, "What happened?" I didn't have the words. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even drink. I lay on the pull-out couch with my eyes open, the room spinning with everything I thought I knew. I thought of the cabin. The whispers. The man's voice. Her laughter. That laugh had once been mine. By morning, I was done. I sent her a message: "You'll find divorce papers in your inbox." No discussion. "I'm staying at Caleb's. Don't contact me." Then I sent the audio to my lawyer. There would be no confrontation. No scene. No second chances. Emily had made her choice behind closed doors. I would make mine in the open. That day, I shut down all our shared accounts, bank logins, streaming services, calendars. I had the locks changed by evening. I didn't respond to her calls or the messages from our mutual friends asking, "Is everything okay?" I didn't owe anyone explanations. The lawyer said I had more than enough evidence. The audio alone could burn bridges in a courtroom. And there was something disturbingly satisfying about handing it over. Like closing a file, labeling it truth. The next few days blurred together. Emily texted, called, left voicemails with crackling sobs and "it's not what you think" that didn't even sound convincing. She reached out through Naomi, through our neighbor Patrick, even through my sister. But I said nothing. What was there to say? She knew what she did. I knew what I'd heard. The hardest part wasn't accepting that she cheated. It was realizing that the woman I loved, trusted, had been replaced by someone who could lie so easily. Someone who could look me in the eye and still choose someone else the minute I turned around. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd erased me from her world while I was still in the room. People always say affairs are about passion. But this wasn't passion. It was erosion, slow, deliberate, silent. It was the deletion of shared routines, the locked screens, the new passwords, the fake stories, the little lies layered one on top of the other until reality buckled. And now I was done holding it up. I didn't cry for her. I cried for me, for the man who held on too long, who believed the story long after it stopped being true. I mourned the idea of us. The picture frames. The anniversary dinners. The morning coffee rituals. She was no longer my wife. She was just a voice behind a door, whispering to someone else. And I was no longer her husband. I was just the guy who finally stopped pretending. I always thought breakups came with shouting, slammed doors, screaming matches, someone throwing a vase just to feel something break. But the real ending? Mine came in silence. Cold, calculated, and quiet. Like a file being deleted. Like the last click before shutting off a screen forever. The morning after I sent Emily the divorce papers, I muted her number. I didn't block her, I wanted a record of everything. I wasn't doing this for drama. I was doing this for peace. And peace doesn't beg. It doesn't explain. I shut down our shared credit card accounts that afternoon. Called the bank. Froze the joint savings. My lawyer handled the logistics with a terrifying kind of efficiency. He said my quick response, paired with the audio, left very little room for her to fight back. She could try, sure. But it would be a waste of her time and energy. I didn't leave a note. No voicemail. No grand declaration. I left a document. A clean, digital package in her inbox. Dissolution papers, evidence attachments, asset separation draft, proposed terms. Neat. Thorough. Ruthless. By noon, I had moved into Caleb's guest room. It was barely bigger than a storage closet and smelled faintly of old carpet cleaner, but it felt like the safest place on earth. Emily sent her first "please can we talk" message that evening. Then a follow-up. Then a string of shorter, more frantic texts. Jason, please. We need to talk. It's not what you think. You misunderstood. Just give me one chance to explain. One. Please. I didn't reply. The next day, my phone buzzed constantly. Not just from her. Naomi messaged me saying, whatever's going on, I'm here for you. Patrick texted, Emily is a wreck. She didn't tell me anything, but she's spiraling. A friend from work even reached out after seeing something cryptic Emily posted on her Instagram story, just a black background with the word broken. Funny. I'd never known her to be that poetic. I deleted Instagram, logged out of Facebook, turned off read receipts. I wasn't interested in witnessing her public grief performance. Whatever remorse she had didn't matter now. Tears don't erase recordings. 3 days after I moved out, I returned to the house with Caleb to pick up the rest of my stuff. I gave her a heads up via email. Told her I'd be there for 1 hour at noon and I expected the house to be empty. She didn't reply. But she wasn't there when I arrived. Good. The place felt sterile, like someone had scrubbed the soul out of it. The couch we picked out together, the bookshelf she insisted on organizing by color, even the candles she bought because they were aesthetic, they all looked like props now. I packed in silence. Clothes. Books. A few photos, but not the ones with her. I left the wedding album in the bottom drawer of the hallway cabinet. Let her decide what to do with that. In the bedroom, I found one of her sweatshirts on my side of the bed. Old. Worn. Familiar. I held it for a second longer than I wanted to admit before tossing it on the chair. On the nightstand, her charger was still plugged in. I didn't take it. That night, I asked Caleb if I could stay longer than I originally planned. He didn't hesitate. Said he was proud of me. Proud for walking away with dignity instead of rage. Proud for protecting my future instead of clinging to a past that had already burned down. I didn't feel proud. I felt hollow. But that was okay. Hollow is a step above broken. Emily continued her attempts. The texts became paragraphs. The paragraphs became essays. Some messages were pleading, others defensive, and a few were just desperate. I didn't plan for any of this. It just happened. I didn't know how to stop it. Can we do counseling? I'll go. I'll do anything. Don't throw us away. Please. We had something real. You know we did. But what she never did. She never denied it. Not once did she say the recording was fake or out of context. Not once did she name the man in the audio. She just kept circling around her guilt like it was a thing she couldn't look at directly. I stopped reading her messages after day 7. My lawyer sent a notice requesting full cooperation on asset division and housing arrangements. Her lawyer responded by requesting a mediation meeting. I agreed, but only digitally. No face-to-face. No more theater. At the mediation, Emily didn't turn on her camera. She typed most of her responses. Her tone was subdued. Polite. Her lawyer spoke for her often, but when she did type, she didn't say much. I want this to be resolved peacefully. I'm not fighting the terms. I just want to move on. And just like that, the woman who once danced barefoot in our kitchen to Stevie Wonder and whispered dreams into my neck at 2 a.m. became a silent, grayscale figure in a Zoom window. It took 3 weeks to finalize the separation agreement. She kept her car. I kept the house. She waived claim to the savings in exchange for keeping her inheritance intact. Clean. Quiet. I deleted our shared photo drive. Removed her from my emergency contact list. Cleared out the drawer at work where I used to keep a spare toothbrush for her overnight visits. I detached from everything. Emotionally. Digitally. Physically. I didn't look back. Because the moment you look back, even for a second, you start romanticizing the fire that burned you. When the final document came through, signed by both parties, stamped, filed, I didn't cry. I just sat on Caleb's balcony, stared at the skyline, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. I didn't tell many people. Just a few close friends. Some offered sympathy, others asked if I wanted to talk about it. But I didn't. I was tired of talking. Talking was what got me here. Listening to half-truths, asking the wrong questions, making space for someone who was already gone. Now, I made space for myself. Emily tried reaching out one last time through her cousin, of all people. A soft-spoken woman named Hannah who called me with a quiver in her voice. She's not okay, she said. She wasn't okay when she let him into our home, I replied. I just thought you should know, Hannah said. She regrets it. Deeply. I'm sure she does, I said. But regret is a mirror, not a bridge. And then I hung up. It's strange. The hardest part of betrayal isn't the anger. It's the emptiness that follows. The vacuum where love used to live. It doesn't hurt like a stab, it hurts like the absence of something you forgot was holding you up. But in that absence, I started building something else. Boundaries. Clarity. A quiet I could finally trust. And from that quiet, I would rise. 3 weeks had passed since the final signatures. I thought that would be the end of it, the paperwork, the silence, the closing of a chapter one never wanted to write. I had blocked Emily's number, filtered her email to a folder I never checked, and told anyone who tried to play messenger that I didn't want updates. I was done living in the wreckage of what she broke. And yet she found a way through. It came by mail, handwritten, no return address, in an envelope with my name in cursive I hadn't seen since our early dating days. Back then she used to leave little notes in my lunchbox. "Miss you already," she'd write. "You make Mondays better." This envelope reminded me of those, but now it felt like a ghost had reached out. I should have thrown it away. Should have tossed it in the fireplace without a second glance. But I opened it. The paper was thick like a wedding invitation. Folded carefully. Her handwriting was still neat, though a little shakier now. I sat on Caleb's porch and read every single word. "Jason, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I won't blame you if you don't. But I need to say some things and I needed to write them, not text, not email. I don't deserve your time, but I need to explain. Not for forgiveness. I know I lost that. But maybe for closure. Maybe for clarity. The affair didn't begin the night you recorded us. It started long before that." I stopped reading for a second. My pulse thudded in my ears. There was something chilling about seeing it in ink. Seeing her admit it so plainly. As if naming it gave it life. I kept reading. It began at a conference last year. You probably remember, late October, the one in Denver. We had just had that fight about your job, how you were working too many hours, how I felt invisible. I boarded that plane feeling more alone than I've ever been, and by the time I landed, I'd convinced myself you didn't care anymore. I met him there. He was charming, sure. But more than that, he listened. Really listened. Asked questions about my life, my work, my dreams. We got coffee. Then lunch. Then a drink. The physical part didn't happen that weekend, but something worse did. I let him into the part of me that used to be yours. I came home and told myself it was nothing. That I was just flattered. That it would fade. It didn't. The words bled guilt. I imagined her writing this alone, maybe crying, maybe not. Maybe this was all for her. A form of penance. Over the next few months, we stayed in touch. It started slow, messages, then calls. We started lying to our partners at the same time. That was something we laughed about once. God, writing that makes me sick now. You started noticing, didn't you? The yoga classes that weren't real. The late meetings. You asked questions, but I brushed them off. I gaslit you. I made you doubt yourself. And somehow you still trusted me. That made it worse. I leaned back in the chair, my chest hollow. I had once spent hours convincing myself I was overreacting. That Emily wasn't the type of person to cheat. That our love meant too much to throw away. She threw it anyway. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I think I got addicted not to him exactly, but to the way I felt around him. Like I was someone new. Someone free. But the truth is, I wasn't free. I was running away from myself. From the guilt? From what I was doing to you. When you caught that message from Beth, I panicked. It wasn't a joke. It was him. His real name isn't even Beth. I changed it so I wouldn't have to face what I was doing. You looked at me that night like you knew. I saw it. I saw the hurt, the suspicion. And still, I lied. She was right, I did know. Not in full, but in fragments. Enough to wonder if I was crazy. Enough to lose sleep trying to decode her eyes. The day you came home early, we weren't expecting you. I can't explain how I felt in that moment. Shock. Shame. Terror. Not because I got caught, but because I realized what I had done to someone who never once stopped showing up for me. You didn't yell. You didn't scream. You didn't throw anything or slam the door. You just left. That's when I knew it was over. She wrote 3 more paragraphs detailing how she spiraled afterward. How she tried to explain herself to friends, but no one knew what to say. How her lover, whose name she still didn't mention, distanced himself the minute things became real. Of course he did. That's how these stories usually go. I'm in therapy now. I know that probably means nothing to you. But I am. My therapist asked me to write a letter not to win you back, but to face what I did. To write it down, not run from it. I cheated on you. I lied to you. I made you feel crazy when all along you were right. And I am so sorry. I reached the final page where she had scribbled something at the bottom, not part of the letter, almost like an afterthought. You were the best thing I had. I didn't lose you the day you left. I lost you the day I stopped telling you the truth. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope and stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just breathed. Because here was the truth. Finally. Laid bare without excuses. No justifications. No blame shifting. Just brutal, awful honesty. But honesty doesn't undo damage. She had burned the bridge and mailed me the ashes. Later that night, I sat on the floor of Caleb's apartment, the letter beside me, and I realized something. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to scream or post about it online. I didn't want her to suffer the way I had. I just wanted it to be over. The letter was closure, but not in the way she intended. Not in the let's start again way. It was closure in the sense that I no longer had to wonder why. I no longer had to fill in the blanks. She had done it for me. All I had to do now was move forward. Without her. Without lies. Without the weight of asking, what if? Because now I had the answer. I thought Emily's letter would be the last twist in the story, that her confession marked the final page. But betrayal has layers, and sometimes the deepest cuts come not from what someone did, but why they did it. The motive arrived in a message not meant for me. It came from Julia, one of Emily's friends, someone I barely knew beyond a few dinner parties. The message was short, clearly forwarded by mistake, a **T of a conversation between Julia and Emily. I recognized Emily's side of the chat instantly. He still hasn't changed the will. It's under my name. Then don't push him right now. Let him cool off. You don't want to ruin your chance of staying in. I stared at the screen, heart thudding. I opened my laptop and pulled up the legal PDF, the will I had drafted 2 years ago. Emily was still listed as my sole beneficiary. She knew. She knew what she'd done. She knew our marriage was finished. And still, she was waiting, not for forgiveness, but for me to forget long enough to leave everything to her. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculation. I changed the will that same day. Called the lawyer, signed the papers, and removed her name entirely. I added my brother Caleb and made a note for charity donations. The change took an hour. But the damage? That would linger far longer. I didn't contact her. I didn't confront her. What was there to say? She hadn't just lied or cheated, she had looked at my future, at everything I'd built, and tried to claim it like a reward for destroying me. But life has a way of circling back. 2 months later, I decided to take a drive. It was a quiet Sunday, the kind that feels both peaceful and hollow. Without thinking, I ended up at the lake, our lake, the one we used to visit every summer. We had a favorite bench near the water, just under the birch trees. I hadn't been back since the year before. And there she was, sitting alone on that bench. She wore a heavy coat, hood down, holding a thermos in one hand and a photo album in the other. I almost turned around. Almost left. But something kept me rooted. She saw me. Our eyes met, and she didn't flinch or smile. She simply nodded. I walked over, slowly, cautiously. When I reached the bench, she scooted aside. No words. Just space. I sat. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The lake rippled quietly in front of us, the late autumn air wrapping around like a blanket. In the distance, a loon called. She opened the photo album and flipped a few pages. Our wedding. A trip to Maine. The first apartment we shared, its crooked blinds and chipped counters. I'm in therapy, she said softly. I nodded. Didn't respond. She stared down at the photos. I thought if I came here, I could figure out what to do with all this. What I broke. What I became. Still, I said nothing. She closed the album. I'm not here to ask for anything. Not forgiveness. Not another chance. Just space to feel the weight of it. I looked out at the water, the place where we used to skip stones and make promises we couldn't keep. After a while, I stood. I hope your therapy helps, I said. And I meant it. Not because I wanted her back. Because I needed to know she was finally looking at the truth. She nodded again, eyes glassy but dry. I walked away, leaving her with the photos and the silence. That moment didn't bring closure. But it brought clarity. Sometimes endings don't need final words or dramatic exits. Sometimes the loudest truths arrive in the quietest places, on a bench by a lake, between two people who finally stopped pretending. And in that silence, I realized. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to walk away. And keep walking.